The champagne glass trembled in my cousin Jessica's manicured hand as she stared at me across her reception hall. Her face had gone completely white beneath her professionally applied makeup. The photographers were still snapping photos, but now they were focused on me, standing there in my cream-colored silk gown, looking every bit like I belonged at this wedding. "Who invited her?" Jessica hissed to her maid of honor, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "And why is she dressed like... She couldn't finish the sentence. But I could finish it for her. I was dressed like a bride. And it was perfect. Jessica and I used to be inseparable. Growing up, we were more like sisters than cousins. We'd spend every summer at our grandmother's house, braiding each other's hair, sharing secrets and dreaming about our future weddings. We promised each other we'd be each other's maids of honor someday. That was before Jessica married Marcus Whitmore III. Marcus came from old money, the kind of family that owned country clubs and had portraits hanging in boardrooms. When Jessica got engaged to him 2 years ago, something shifted in her. She started using words like aesthetic and curated experience. She hired a stylist and began speaking with this weird, affected accent that made her sound like she'd gone to boarding school instead of Roosevelt High with the rest of us. But the real change was how she started treating me. Suddenly, my job as a teacher's aide wasn't impressive enough. My apartment in the older part of town wasn't the right neighborhood. My clothes from Target weren't on brand for her new lifestyle. The first red flag came during her engagement party. She introduced me to Marcus's family as my cousin who works with children, not my cousin Sarah who I love. When I wore a dress I'd found on sale at TJ Maxx, she pulled me aside and whispered, "Next time maybe something a little more elevated?" I should have seen what was coming. The wedding planning became a nightmare. Every conversation with Jessica felt like a performance evaluation I was failing. When she asked me to be a bridesmaid, I was thrilled, until she handed me the requirements. The bridesmaid dresses were $400 each. The shoes were another $150. The mandatory spa day was $300. The bachelorette party in Napa? $800 minimum. "I know it's a lot," Jessica said, not looking sorry at all. "But Marcus's family has certain expectations. We need everything to be perfect." I worked overtime for 2 months to afford it all. I skipped meals and picked up extra tutoring sessions on weekends. When I finally told Jessica I could swing it, she smiled. But it wasn't the warm smile I remembered from our childhood. Then came the dress shopping. Jessica brought Marcus's sister Vanessa and her college roommate Brittany, both of whom treated me like I was invisible. When I found a dress I loved and could afford, Vanessa wrinkled her nose. "It's very suburban," she said, looking to Jessica for approval. Jessica nodded. "Sarah, honey, maybe something with cleaner lines. More sophisticated." The sophisticated dress cost $600. I put it on my credit card. But the real humiliation came at the rehearsal dinner venue tasting. Jessica had invited the whole bridal party to help choose the menu. When we arrived at the 5-star restaurant, the maitre d' looked confused as he checked his list. "I'm sorry," he said to me, "but I don't see your name on the reservation." Jessica's face flushed. "Oh, that's just my cousin Sarah. She's not really part of the tasting committee." Vanessa and Brittany exchanged glances. "The venue capacity is limited," Vanessa added helpfully. "We had to be selective." I stood there in the restaurant lobby, wearing the expensive dress I'd charged to my credit card, watching my childhood best friend pretend I didn't matter enough to taste wedding cake. That night, I heard Jessica on the phone with someone, probably Brittany, saying, "I love Sarah, but she's not really wedding material. She doesn't understand the aesthetic we're going for. I'm worried she'll ruin the photos." Those words hit me like a physical blow. Wedding material. As if our entire childhood friendship could be reduced to whether I looked good enough in pictures. The final straw came 3 weeks before the wedding. I was at work when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Text after text from mutual friends and family members. "Sarah, did you see Jessica's Instagram? Are you okay? What happened? I can't believe she posted that." My hands were shaking as I opened Instagram. Jessica had posted a beautiful graphic of her reception seating chart, all elegant calligraphy and gold foil accents. She'd tagged everyone who was invited, adding cute little captions about how excited she was to celebrate with her favorite people. My name wasn't on it anywhere. I scrolled through the comments, watching as people I'd known my whole life realized I'd been uninvited to my own cousin's wedding. Aunt Marie had commented, "Wait, where's Sarah sitting?" Jessica had responded with a heart emoji and had to make some tough space decisions. Red heart. Tough space decisions. I stared at that phrase until it burned itself into my brain. My phone rang. It was my mom and she was furious. "Sarah, please tell me this is some kind of mistake," she said. "Please tell me Jessica didn't actually uninvite you to her wedding and then broadcast it on social media." But I couldn't tell her that because it wasn't a mistake. Jessica had made her choice. I wasn't aesthetic enough. I wasn't wedding material. I didn't belong in her curated life. I sat in my classroom after the kids went home, staring at the bridesmaid dress hanging in my closet at home. The $600 dress I'd charged to my credit card for a wedding I was no longer invited to attend. That's when I made my decision. I picked up my phone and sent Jessica a text. "Got your message loud and clear. Thanks for the heads up." Then I went shopping. The morning of Jessica's wedding, I woke up early and got ready like I was preparing for battle. I'd found the perfect dress online. A cream-colored silk slip dress with delicate beading around the neckline. It wasn't white technically, but in the right light it was close enough. I did my own hair and makeup, taking care to look polished but not overdone. I wanted to look beautiful, but I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard. The goal wasn't to upstage Jessica. It was to make her question why she'd excluded me in the first place. I arrived at the church 30 minutes before the ceremony started. The parking lot was full of expensive cars, BMWs, Mercedes, a few Teslas. I parked my Honda Civic right in the front row and took a deep breath. The moment I walked through the church doors, conversations stopped. People turned to stare. I could hear whispers following me as I found a seat in the back. "Is that Sarah? Why is she dressed like that? I thought she wasn't invited." Marcus's great-aunt Eleanor, whom I'd met briefly at the engagement party, spotted me and waved. "Sarah dear, come sit with us. There's plenty of room in the family section." I smiled graciously and moved to the second row, right behind Marcus's parents. His mother turned around and smiled at me warmly. "You look absolutely lovely," she said. "That color is perfect on you." The ceremony began, and I watched Jessica walk down the aisle in her $8,000 designer gown. She looked beautiful, but when her eyes found mine in the crowd, her step faltered. For just a moment, her perfect smile wavered. I sat through the entire ceremony with my hands folded in my lap, smiling serenely. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't make a sound. I just existed in her space, looking exactly like I belonged there. The real drama came at the reception. I'd planned to leave after the ceremony, but Eleanor had insisted I come to the cocktail hour. "Any cousin of the bride is family to us," she'd said firmly. When Jessica and Marcus arrived at the reception venue, I was already there, standing by the bar with a glass of champagne, chatting with Marcus's college roommate about his job in finance. Jessica's face went dead white when she saw me. She beelined straight for me, her train trailing behind her like a battle flag. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, grabbing my arm. "Celebrating your marriage," I said calmly, taking a sip of my champagne. "Congratulations, by the way. The ceremony was lovely. You can't be here. You're not invited. This is my wedding." People were starting to stare. Marcus appeared at Jessica's elbow, looking confused and embarrassed. "Jess, what's wrong?" he asked, then noticed me. "Oh, hey Sarah. Great to see you. You look amazing." Jessica's grip on my arm tightened. "She wasn't invited, Marcus. She needs to leave." The conversations around us had stopped completely now. Marcus's family was watching, his mother's face creased with concern. Eleanor stepped forward. "Not invited?" she said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that comes from years of running charity galas. "But she's your cousin. Family doesn't need invitations." Jessica's face was getting blotchy now, her carefully applied makeup showing stress cracks. "It's complicated," she stammered. "We had space limitations." "Space limitations?" Marcus's mother joined the conversation now, and her tone was ice cold. "Jessica dear, you had 300 guests at this wedding. Surely you could have found space for your own cousin." I could see Jessica realizing that this wasn't going the way she'd planned. She'd expected me to slink away in shame. Instead, I was standing there looking perfectly composed while she fell apart in front of her new in-laws. "She's trying to upstage me," Jessica said desperately. Look at her dress. She's dressed like a bride. Eleanor looked me up and down appraisingly. She's dressed like a lady attending a wedding, she said firmly. Which is exactly what she's doing. The confrontation had drawn a crowd, and word spread quickly through the reception. Guests who hadn't noticed me before were suddenly very interested in the drama unfolding by the bar. Marcus looked mortified. "Jess, maybe we should just let it go," he whispered to his new wife. "She's here now and she's not causing any trouble." But Jessica was past the point of rational thought. Years of trying to prove she belonged in this wealthy world had made her paranoid about anything that might threaten her perfect image. "No," she said loudly. "This is my day. She needs to go." That's when Marcus's father stepped in. William Whitmore III was the kind of man who commanded respect just by existing. He'd been quietly watching the drama unfold, but now he moved forward with purpose. "Jessica," he said, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority, "you're making a scene at your own wedding. That reflects poorly on you, not on your cousin." The words hung in the air like a judgment. Jessica's face crumpled, but before she could respond, the wedding planner appeared at her elbow. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said urgently, "the photographer needs you for the family photos. We're running behind schedule." Jessica looked around desperately, realizing she'd created exactly the kind of scene she'd been trying to avoid. Her perfect wedding was being derailed by her own paranoia and cruelty. Eleanor took my arm gently. "Come along, dear," she said. "Let me introduce you to some people. I have a feeling you're much more interesting than anyone here realizes." As Jessica was dragged away for photos, I found myself surrounded by Marcus's extended family, people who were genuinely curious about me and seemed appalled by how I'd been treated. They asked about my work with children, complimented my dress, and included me in conversations about everything from travel to books. For the rest of the reception, I had the strangest experience of my life. I was having more fun at Jessica's wedding than Jessica was. I stayed for the entire reception. I danced with Marcus's grandfather, a charming 82-year-old who told me stories about his late wife. I laughed with his cousins from Boston who were visiting for the weekend. I even caught the bouquet, completely by accident, but the irony wasn't lost on anyone. Jessica spent the entire night shooting daggers at me from across the room. Every time I laughed or smiled or looked like I was enjoying myself, her face got a little tighter. She barely spoke to her own guests, too busy monitoring my movements to actually enjoy her wedding day. During the father-daughter dance, I caught her staring at me again. This time, instead of anger, I saw something else in her eyes: regret. She was realizing what she'd given up when she decided I wasn't good enough for her new life. The moment that broke my heart and healed it at the same time came during the bouquet toss. As I mentioned, I caught it completely by accident. It bounced off another guest's hands and landed in mine. The crowd cheered, but when I looked up, Jessica was crying. Not tears of joy. Tears of loss. She'd gotten everything she thought she wanted. The wealthy husband, the expensive wedding, the approval of his family. But she'd sacrificed the people who actually knew and loved her to get it. She was surrounded by 300 guests, but she'd never been more alone. After the reception, as I was walking to my car, Marcus caught up with me. "Sarah, wait," he said, slightly out of breath from running in his tuxedo. "I need to apologize for what happened earlier. That wasn't okay." I turned to face him, this man I barely knew who'd just married my oldest friend. "It's not your fault, Marcus. But you should know, that's not who Jessica used to be. She used to be kind and loyal and fun. I hope you get to meet that version of her someday." He nodded slowly. "I think I'd like that." As I drove home that night, still wearing my cream silk dress, I felt something I hadn't expected: peace. I'd spent months being hurt and angry about Jessica's rejection. But seeing her at her own wedding, paranoid and miserable despite getting everything she thought she wanted, I realized something important. Her rejection of me said nothing about my worth and everything about her fears. 6 months later, I got a text from Jessica. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. "I'm sorry," it said. "You were right. Excluding you didn't make me shine. It just made me look mean." I stared at that message for a long time before responding. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her sit with the consequences of her choices. But the bigger part of me, the part that remembered braiding her hair in our grandmother's backyard, couldn't do that. "I know," I texted back. "Are you ready to remember who you used to be? We're working on rebuilding our relationship now. slow, and some things will never be the same. Trust, once broken, takes time to repair. But Jessica is slowly finding her way back to the person she was before she decided that love had to be earned through perfect aesthetics and social status. To anyone reading this who's been made to feel like they don't belong, like they're not good enough, like they need to change themselves to deserve love, you don't. You belong exactly as you are. The people who can't see your worth aren't the people you need in your life. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show up anyway, not to prove them wrong, but to prove to yourself that you're worth showing up for. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, showing up exactly as you are will remind someone else of who they used to be before they decided that perfection was more important than love. If you've experienced something similar, share your story in the comments. Let's remind each other that we're all wedding material, exactly as we are. Like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and remember, you don't need anyone's permission to take up space in this world.